Hey guys, welcome back to the garage. Today we've got an exciting and quite frankly well overdue video for you. What we're going to be doing is installing some Banks gauge pod mounts into the factory A-pillar. Now, I have a video already on YouTube of me installing the Banks gauge pods into a autometer A-pillar. That pillar was never intended for the 5th gen trucks. It was meant for the 4th gens. It had to be modified pretty heavily in the sort of bottom of the A-pillar section, right around here. It never fit as well as you'd like. Banks has, after 4 years of the 5th gen truck being out, finally gotten to creating a pod for their, pod mount rather, for their pods. So we're gonna go ahead and take a look at the package and see what comes with them. Okay, so go ahead and see what's inside this box here. All right, so you're gonna get a package from Banks, looks like this. Yeah, nothing else in here. Don't need that. Pop this open and see just what kind of product we're looking at here. So just first impressions, it is a fairly thick plastic. It feels, heavy duty, fairly well made. It's got the Banks logo here. It will sit in the truck sort of like this. And this is the factory A-pillar. I don't think I've mentioned that already. Again, I've already got the Banks pods installed in the truck. I still have to take them out. But first we're going to be doing a little bit of work on the factory A-pillar. This plastic mount comes in black. If you have an interior on your truck that is, say, tan, Banks, they do have, I think it's bankspower.com/paint. Don't quote me on that. They do have different interior paints that you can use to match your interior trim. Fortunately, mine's black. It comes in black, so it's going to be a fairly straightforward process. I will say the sheen on part of this is a little bit inconsistent. On this sort of back area, it's a little bit flatter. I don't know if you can see that here, and on this side area, it's a little bit glossier. I'm assuming maybe this will fade with time, but it's really a fairly small difference, and it will be a massive upgrade over the setup I have now, simply because the A-pillar currently in there is not, the fitment is not as great as I would like, and I'll show you that once we hop into the truck to swap these out. Anyway, the first thing we're going to be doing is setting the mount aside and pulling out the tools that come with this this kit here. So you get your Allen key, install the Allen head bolt. You also get a pair of flush cuts, which are used to modify your factory A-pillar because it is something that requires a little bit of modification. Essentially, I think we can do away with this sort of cover because this is going to be mounted permanently in place. So the first step in terms of getting this modified is to pull out this factory cover here, which we can do from the back. We can use our flush cuts, clip this off. There we go. So that clears that out. This will now, you can just test fit the bracket or the mount in place. So that'll mount, and they're pretty much like this. Now there's a screw, that Allen head screw that we had earlier, that will pass through a hole in this mount here, like so, and through this mounting hole to mount to the A-pillar in the truck. That'll pull it all quite tight and keep anything from moving around, like so. So this is how it'll be in the truck. So what we'll need to do to get this guy mounted properly is to come in here and cut away this ridge here. We're going to be cutting it halfway down into this sort of hole or cylinder area. They explain that as well on the bank's website, and what they tell you to do is to come in here with these flush cuts and just kind of work away at it. I just don't want to mar anything outside of the area where we're supposed to be cutting. Like, you know, aesthetically I don't want to ruin that. So I'm gonna go ahead and speed through this and meet back with you once I got it finished up. I just wanted to take a second and show you what this looks like a little bit from the back side. You can kind of see where the flush cut is protruding through. It's about as deep as we need to go. To get this clear, we got to do this on both sides to get that piece out. And again, we're doing this so we can feed the wires for the actual pods, the gauge pods, through the A-pillar and into the new mount. This is just essentially clearancing the wires. So I'll continue with this and then meet back up with you when I'm done. Okay, so I've gotten this area here notched out, and this will allow for the wires for the pods, the two pods, to pass through the A-pillar and into this pod mount here. So, rather, there we go. Pass into this pod mount here. Okay, so the next step we're going to do is go over to the truck, pull out the existing A-pillar, disconnect the pods, and then get them all set up in here. So I'm going to go over to the truck. We'll get started on actually installing the pods into these new cups and into this A-pillar. Okay guys, we're in the truck now, obviously. This is the Autometer A-pillar, and if you look closely, it comes out over the windshield a little bit more. You can kind of see the black dots on the edge of the windshield are pretty much covered by the pillar. It's always bothered me a little bit, but it's done very well, obviously, for what it is. The pods are in here, it does a great job. But I would like to sort of retain the factory grab handle, and obviously being able to use the factory pillar, it's a lot more fit and finish. So what we're gonna do is pull this guy out, pull the pods out of this mount, and then remount them in the new one. So first thing you wanna do whenever you're working in this area is disconnect the battery. If you are like my truck and you got a diesel, probably have two batteries, make sure you disconnect both. They both feed into this airbag system, so disconnect both of them. If you don't have two batteries, just disconnect the one. Cycle the door a few times, make sure it's actually dead, you know, make sure you're not gonna accidentally knock the airbag and set it off on you. So once you've gotten that done, go ahead and start removing the pillar. Now this one is held in with this one screw and the weather stripping. Now to see more sort of detail on how to pull out the factory A-pillar, I'll go ahead and throw a link to the original install of this pod and this pillar, and that'll show you how to remove the factory A-pillar. But for this one, all it's really needed is a little bit of that weather stripping, and this thing will drop right out. Now, what I'm gonna need to do next is remove these pods from this pillar, which will be a little bit harder to do. But what I can do first is reach in here and just disconnect the clips from this guy, and I can work with this a lot more freely. So this is what we'll then use to pass through the factory mount. So I'm going to put this guy aside over here, and we can take this time now to reinstall our factory pillar. And you'll see here's your airbag, you want to avoid that. But this hole here is where we're going to be passing all of these cables through. The hole that we created earlier, lay this kind of in place here, and this will allow us to feed this through that hole. Now this thing is designed for 2 pods and not much more than that, so we're running pretty much the maximum amount of cable through this little hole that we can fit. get the factory pillar in place, and then you're gonna snap it back into position. Just make sure your snaps are lined up before you give it a good firm push. Make sure you're not pinching or weather stripping. So go through here and pop that out, and then pinch that back into position. And that's pretty much sort of snug installed. We have to obviously go through and tighten up the actual hardware. Now, the first bit of hardware is going to be in here. The second bit is in here. If you don't already have one, get a plastic trim removal tool. We're going to pop this cap off. The actual bolt here that we're going to be running is a 10 millimeter, and it's going to go through the trim piece and into the A-pillar. Tighten that up there. Until it's nice and snug. Okay, so this one, the bolt is now secure, stuck. We can tuck that guy back away, get that out of the way. We're gonna go ahead now and run the cables through the pillar, through the pod mount rather. They're already through the pillar. Yes, before we do that, we can also put the weather stripping back. Get it snug back up in here. There we go. So, pillar is covered. Go ahead and get these cables run through. We're gonna do a 4 and a 6. The 4 pin and the 6 pin through one, and then this one, the longer one, will go to the daisy chained pod. So run that one through. So the next step here will be to, before we throw the pods in, obviously install the hardware. Get our Allen key. There we go. It's a little hard to get started. But once you get it going, it's actually not as bad as it might look when you get started with it. Perfect. Okay, so now we've got the cables extended into the pillar here. I'll bring you over in a second and show you what it looks like from this angle. I can already tell I'm gonna enjoy this more. The pods won't be as sort of obtrusive in my view. Okay, so this is what I'm looking at here with it installed. Again, this is the top mount here, and these are obviously the pods. It's a very thick plastic, as you can see. I'm fairly impressed with the construction quality. I'm a little bummed, I suppose, that the I don't know, the pattern on here doesn't necessarily match the pattern on the factory A pillar. I'm not sure why that is. Maybe it's different for 21 and up compared to 20, I guess 19 to 21, 19 to 20. Who knows? If you guys have a 19 and 20 truck and your A-pillar pattern is more like this as opposed to this, let me know. But either way, I'm glad I got the sort of the Banks logo there with the Banks pods, and I do like how they've designed this. It's very strong. It's not cheap, flimsy, flexible, that type of thing. So what I'm going to do is set you back up where I had you and throw the pods in here, get the truck started with the batteries reconnected, and see how it all looks. Okay, so this time, I guess with this connection, we're going to run the 4 connector. I believe this is the pedal monster. Don't quote me on that. It's been a while since I've done the install on this. We're going to install the 4-pin connector to the data monster. There we go. And we're going to install the 6-pin connector to the same data monster there. Perfect. Okay. Now, unlike the other pillar, since this pod is made for these gauges, you should not need, and there is no way to secure them in with screws or bolts and whatnot. You simply press fit them in, and as it says in its install video, just make sure you line this up orientation wise how you want it. They say to keep the Banks logo level, which seems like a pretty easy way to figure out where you need to line this up. Perfect. So that's one done. We're gonna go ahead and get the other one set. There we go. And this one is just the 1 6-pin connector that's daisy chained to it. There we go. lined up and press this one in. Okay, and this is what we got from the driver's seat. It's a really clean look. I do quite like how they've got them stacked like this as opposed to one on top of the other. You know, we read from left to right, not top to bottom. I just feel like it's going to be easier to see. They're not, you know, sticking up right in my face here or here. I've got the factory grab handle, which I really like. So I'm going to go ahead, reconnect the batteries, turn the truck on, and see how these look. All right, guys, back up here in the truck now. It's on, and these gauge pods are working just as they did before. I've got basically everything to do with the exhaust system on this pod and everything else to do with driving over here, personal choice. You know, DEF concentration, or rather DPF percentage difference there. DEF regeneration percentage, basically when that gets to 100, it does a regen. Regen is currently off. And my 4 EGTs. And over here, got mass airflow, currently in park. That's the boost, turbo vane position. Basically, I have that set just to make sure my exhaust brake still works when it's on. And torque. Ambient percent horsepower. I think this is the amount of horsepower left that I'm not using as a percentage, and that's the cylinder fuel rate. Anyway, if you're ever interested in why I have those up there, feel free to DM me on Instagram at harrisons.garage. In the meantime, I am quite pleased with this. It looks really trim. You know, they've put some thought into the detail of the design here. Really pleased with how that's all looking. So if you found this video helpful, if you want to know more about these pods in particular, why I've got them set up the way I do, or how I feel about this mount versus the old one, feel free to send me a DM on Instagram at harrisons.garage. If you haven't already, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and as always, stay tuned for more.